Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and this is Radioland, my international radio trends newsletter and podcast from radioland.email. And this podcast is sponsored by rss.com. Now, if you've heard ads in this podcast already, then the good news is you can now get rid of them in Apple Podcasts. Just follow the link to become a supporter and listen ad-free. And the only reason I can do that is that rss.com has added that functionality automatically, so I can feed an ad-free version to premium supporters like you and the normal ad-supported one to everyone else. This is my newsletter for May the 5th, and the first thing to do is to welcome a brand new media company to Australia. It's called Tapt Media, T-A-P-T. It's the new radio company in Australia that owns 2GB, 3AW, 4BC, and 6PR, which came into being on the 1st of May. They own 4 heritage talk brands, 2 of which are number 1 in their markets, and I've taken a look at the company's swish new website. And I've uncovered a few concerning things. For a start, the company has a hero video, which has lots of personalities on their radio stations, except none from Brisbane. That doesn't sound too great for 4BC, which is a radio station that was once essentially shut down and turned into a rebroadcast of a Sydney radio station. But worse, if you take a look at that video, then you can discover, well, as I did, that they have faked a video of Brisbane Airport to go in there. I've no idea why. They call themselves local and trusted. Be nice if they were. Now, in early March, a little frustrated about the ACMA's speed in invoking licence conditions about Kyle and Jackie O, I made a formal Freedom of Information request to the ACMA for ARN's representations. That's the letter that they had sent the ACMA to argue against the licence conditions that the ACMA had proposed in November and still hadn't put in place by March. They responded on March the 11th, saying that they had to refer the FOI request to ARN, putting the new licence conditions in place on March the 16th. But the FOI request that I made rumbled on, a legal deadline of ACMA to get back to me by May the 4th. Yesterday was May the 4th. Magically, a response came back yesterday. The ACMA has consulted with ARN. They're removing some names and contact details for ARN employees, which is fair enough. But also, after ARN asked them to, they've removed some information in specific paragraphs about, quote, the nature of the programme's target audience and the audience's expectation for specific content, which are stations that ACMA say could reasonably be expected to have an unreasonable adverse effect on ARN's business or commercial affairs. I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, to be fair. But anyway, ARN has asked for all of those paragraphs to be removed. The ACMA is suggesting that only discrete statements within those paragraphs should be removed, which now means that the document will be released to me, but only after ARN is given another 30 days to seek internal review. ARN's already had 30 days, after all, to make submissions regarding this FOI request, but it sounds like ARN now have a further 30 days to object to ACMA's decision around it. And if ARN object, and why wouldn't they, then that means a further 30 days that ACMA has to reconsider, which will kick all of this into July. I wonder when the court cases for ARN will finish. We should probably find out. It should be noted that in the UK, a complaint about offensive language on the radio on October the 9th was investigated and adjudicated just 2 months later by Ofcom on December the 15th. And another complaint took just 5 months, but the ACMA's investigations are related in part to output from August the 14th, 2024. And it took the ACMA until March the 16th, 2026 to finalise action against the broadcaster. 19 months to reach a decision that should surely have been made much quicker. Elsewhere, Tom Webster has written a long piece about the potential merger between SiriusXM and iHeartMedia. It's very good. It highlights a number of individual parts of the deal, but it does tackle head-on the loss of localness concern that many people have of iHeart being taken over by SiriusXM. As you would expect, Tom Webster's done the research, and in short, there's really very limited local content anyway. Those days are long gone. It's very much recommended for a read if you want to take a peek at that. In Australia, the government has extended the suspension of the commercial broadcasting tax for a further 2 years until June the 8th, 2028. It's been suspended since June 2025. The tax is up to 40,000 Australian dollars per FM transmitter, but as far as I can tell, all Brisbane broadcasts are at a lower strength, meaning just 10% of that tax is charged. Still, $4,500 is worth saving if you can. In Luxembourg, there'll be a new FM station on May the 5th, and it's in English. It's called Radio Luxembourg. No, it's not. It's called RTL Today Radio, and it offers the best music, news, weather, and services in English, aimed at international visitors to Luxembourg, as well as commuters and English-speaking residents. It's an offshoot of RTL Today, which is an English-language website, and you'll find it on 93.3 FM. In case it doesn't sound too new to you, well, it launched online in March 2022. Went to DAB Plus in December 2025, and now it's just managed to nab this FM frequency from RTL Deutschland's hit radio, which presumably was already well receivable in the Duchy anyway. In Ireland, 3 FM stations are also to go national on DAB+. Ireland's had a mixed relationship with DAB. Public service broadcaster RTE broadcast on it for a long while, but shut their network down in March 2021 because none of the commercial stations showed any interest in DAB at all. Then there was no DAB broadcasts until April 2025, but this time it was the commercial radio broadcasters doing a trial, which is running until at least the end of this year and covers 85% of the population. Will RTE be back on the platform at some point? Well, Ireland is also the only country that I'm aware of with pirate DAB broadcasting, which cutely Wonaught's described as other, which is very smart. But pirate DAB broadcasting, you know that DAB's made it then, don't you? I mentioned earlier, but worthwhile mentioning again, an Ofcom complaint, which was sorted in a couple of months. Quite excellent, though. It's a complaint about bad language on the radio. This was a radio station called Horizon Radio. It was in Milton Keynes, and it was broadcasting on DAB. And the broadcast on DAB, well, I can bleep my words here. So the broadcast on DAB was 26 minutes of the word f*** repeated, which is very excellent. Congratulations to them. Apparently a technical problem, I'm sure it was. But it's worth taking a read of the Ofcom complaint. And finally, Death Watch Corner for AM in Perth, 720 kilohertz and 810 kilohertz. That's ABC Radio Perth and ABC Radio National are now off air. That's completed the switchover of those stations to FM as well as DAB Plus and online, of course. Now, what do we know so far? Well, only half of the radio survey numbers include that FM switch, which happened at the end of February. And of course, AM was still kind of on the air for those stations. But even then, Radio Perth saw their weekly listeners up by 6.6%. Radio National, their figures are up by 17%. So very clearly, it's having a good effect over there. In Auckland, a radio station called 531PI, which is a radio station for Pacific Islanders aged 40 or older, has switched from 531 kilohertz to 102.2 FM. The station's now calling itself PMN. It's mostly in FM in other parts of New Zealand as well. Also in Auckland, another radio station going silent on 810 kilohertz, the BBC World Service, after an infrastructure change at the transmission site meant it just couldn't broadcast anymore. Oops. Anyway, the station had a few local segments produced by the Auckland Radio Trust, but other than that, it was the BBC World Service pretty well 24 hours a day. In Poland, a radio station which I'm going to call Radio Andrikow, which is probably not how you pronounce that, but anyway, it's a low-power radio station in a small town to the southeast of Krakow. That has left 1584 kilohertz and will be on 90.9 FM from May the 20th. It remains on DAB Plus and online in the meantime. That used to carry network programming, but is now to carry more local programming and is licensed to the library in the town. Ah, bless. But another radio station coming off AM. And let's finish with 3 more. Back to Australia, Vision Radio is ceasing 3 AM transmitters, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth, and will go DAB Plus and online only. It's an interesting exercise to wonder whether, if you are the owner of an AM license, you need to actually broadcast on it to retain that license. But let's just remind ourselves that in the capital cities, 39% of radio listening is not to AM or FM at all, and DAB is bigger than online. Anyway, all of that leads me on to where I'm speaking next, which is the podcast show in London. In May, I'll be keynoting at that event. I'm recording Pod News Weekly Review. I think I'm moderating a panel, and I think I'm on a panel. So I'll be busy. So that should be fun. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you there. Also, I'm at Forward, the Western Canada Media Conference in Kelowna in British Columbia in June, and Radio Days Asia in Jakarta in Indonesia in September as well. And thank you to the many supporters of this newsletter and of the podcast, including Broadcast Radio, Play It Software, Radio King, Media Results Inc., and Brun Audio Consulting, plus Daffith Furnham, Marty from New York, Gavin Watson, Greg Strassel, Sam Phelps, Richard Hilton, Emma Gibbs, Jocelyn Abbey, and James Masterton for being regular supporters. If you would like to support that work in any way, you can buy me a coffee. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. There is a email version of this newsletter if you prefer that. And why wouldn't you, frankly? You can find that at radioland.email. And my website has more details about who I am, what I do, and whether I can help you further. That is at james.crid.land. And until next time, keep listening.